We could arguably summarize conservatism in a few general ways, as does Kirk. He tells us that conservatism has at least the following characteristics: the existence of an enduring moral order, an adherence to custom, convention, and continuity, a reliance on prescriptions issued from our wise forefathers, a belief that prudence is a chief virtue, a firm conviction that governments cannot perfect human beings, the idea that freedom and private property are closely linked, that voluntary community is preferable to involuntary collectivism, that the liberals and radicals, the conservative holds, are imprudent, for they dash at their objectives without giving much heed to the risk of new abuses worse than the evils they hope to sweep away. And he continues, human society being complex, remedies cannot be simple if they're to be effective. Sudden and slashing reforms are as perilous as sudden and slashing surgery. The march of God's providence is slow. It's the devil who's always in a hurry. We are conservatives because we understand the true meaning of liberty, and that liberty requires order. Edmund Burke wrote that the only liberty I mean is a liberty connected with order. That not only exists along with order and virtue, but which cannot exist at all without them. We understand that there are roots of the American order that require persistent protection. They require a vigilant and diligent effort to educate rising generations about human nature and human experience. They require the best in all of us constantly. Thank you for inviting me here tonight. I hope I didn't say anything that prevents you from inviting me back. Thank you very much.
President Obama talks a lot about hope, talks a lot about change, and about the time he got elected, he started talking about sacrifice. And right about the time he started talking about sacrifice, he passed the small s stimulus package, capital P pork barrel spending package. And so we got some idea of what kind of sacrifice he was talking about. The type of sacrifice that I got out of that is that instead of tax and spend, it's spend and tax type of sacrifice. Well, then he started talking about cutting the deficit in half, right about the time that he started proposing the largest budget in the history of our country for this next year. And almost on a daily basis, we see rights that he's proposing to erode, whether from Second Amendment or other freedoms that we enjoy. He's got proposals on how he can take those from us. And he tries to take away our natural resource development as well. So I've heard about the sacrifice from Obama, and I thought maybe you'd like a Republican perspective tonight. I like to talk about the basis of being a Republican in terms that come from the Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So these God-given rights that we have and that Paul talked about are the basis for what we believe in as Republicans, because our rights are not given to us by man. They're not given to us by government. They're given to us by God. And it's the duty of government to protect those rights. Well, that's what we do.
I wanted to just briefly share with you a quote from Governor Jindal. And for those of you that are not familiar with him, he is the governor of Louisiana and was asked to give the Republican response last Tuesday night to the President's State of the Union address. And I was very impressed with it. By a show of hands, how many of you saw Governor Jindal's response? About maybe a third to a half. Well, I won't bore you with all of it, though. But it's interesting. The media just immediately attacked him. I watched it, and I was so impressed because I was listening to the words that he said and the message that he conveyed. I wasn't so much focused on what he was wearing or how he was intoning his voice or whether he walked from a dark background onto the camera. And I was so shocked when I heard the liberal media attacking him. In fact, Helen Thomas, the 150-year-old White House correspondent, even made a racial joke about him that was caught on tape, which I was very disappointed in. I was especially disappointed that the media would make fun of his suit, because they, of all people, should know that the RNC spent all of their wardrobe budget on Sarah Palin. So.
And we can spend our time looking back and saying, well, you should have done this differently, and you should have done that differently. We can do that if we want to do something that's not very productive. But we should recognize that we are in a wrenching period of adjustment to this reality. And while it's an unfair question, it's perhaps, in the context of where we are tonight, the right question to ask. All right, if Abraham Lincoln were suddenly thrust into this situation, what would he do? There's a phrase of Lincoln's I've used before that I like that comes out of the Civil War as he faced these challenges, which America had never faced before. He said, we must think anew and we must act anew. One of my criticisms of President Obama is that he has put his economic package together against an artificial deadline. He said, I want the stimulus package written and passed so that on Inauguration Day, I can sign it as I go from the inaugural platform on my way to the ceremonial lunch. Unfortunately, it was done before we left for the President's Day recess. Cobbled together in a hurry, cobbled together with no Republican input, no Republican present in the room when the final version was put together, and rushed through Congress by the power of the majority vote. I think Abraham Lincoln would have given it a little more thought and taken a little more time. The Civil War
and free markets prevail over fascism and communism. Today in America, we today are healthier, we live longer, we are richer, we can afford to purchase more things, we have better jobs at better pay, we have more time and money for recreation, sports, the arts, we have bigger and better homes, we are much less risk for catastrophic accidents, we breathe cleaner air and drink safer water, and the list could go on and on and on.
They say we are becoming the party of no, and I admit I am becoming a person of no. But then they give me so much to which I can say no. And I'm going to do it. But I want you to know, even though we're saying all those no back there, you look very carefully and you will still notice that every time the Republicans are giving an alternative. They gave us a stimulus bill, we gave them a stimulus package back that would have twice as many jobs for half the cost. They're proposing a business tax on small business. We're proposing incentives to have small business hire more people where the majority of our jobs are. We haven't solved the energy crisis. In March, I will come up again with a comprehensive energy plan. When they do a carbon tax, we're going to have a cap and trade alternative that does not have to have an increase in taxes. You look for us, and the Republicans will have another alternative, and it's going to be based on the wonderful principles that Paul talked about as he gave the foundation of what conservatism actually is. So, listen to what we're doing. I mean, look, today we're underestimated. Unfortunately, it's by the Democratic Party, who believes that Americans can't rise to the challenge, and government's the only thing that can do it. They are underestimating Americans, and Americans will rise to the challenge, and it will be the Republican Party that will lead that renaissance of America, and it will start today. And thank you for being here.